Only waste $48 million and get a $7 million bonus. But guess who's eating that bill? Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Liz McDonald in for David Asman. Uncle Sam doling out cash prizes to the states. Get this, wasting the least amount of food stamp money. And you heard that one right. Now some saying time for federally enforced work requirements for food stamps to chuck the waste. But will it work? Let's go in focus. We've got Rich Carlgard, Mike Ozanian, John Tamny, Bill Baldwin, Rick Unger, and Sabrina Schaefer. So, Sabrina, fix the waste by making it harder to get food stamps. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Look, Emac, I know none of us on this panel begrudge people who fall on hard times. All of us can imagine what that might be like for somebody. But what's clear is that our safety net is terribly broken. Look, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, has doubled in size since 2007. It is now helping 47 million Americans. I know our economy is not great right now, but I also know that there is something terribly wrong if we have 1 in 7 Americans depending on food stamps.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, Mike Ozanian, this debate often gets derailed by people who think we don't want to help widows and orphans and, children. That's not where the debate sits. We've added the equivalent of New York State over the last decade or so to the food stamp rolls. It's now about New York and I think Texas combined. And so what is the problem here? What's wrong, Mike? What do you think is the fix?
Well, I think the main problem is the president's economic policies have been terrible. I think what you need to take away from this, the big picture, Emac, is that if you go back to what a real recovery is, in the mid-'80s, the average person was on food stamps for 6 months. Today, after 4 years of the Obama recovery, the average person is on food stamps 9 months. That tells you all you need to know about how bogus President Obama's economic policies are.
Yeah, and Rick, here's the issue. The rate of growth is what we're talking about, right, Rick Unger? In other words, it's growing faster than GDP, faster than tax revenue growth. We've been through all sorts of economic downturns, but it's a real explosion in food stamps. Should we bring back work requirements?
Well, why don't we look at what's different here? Because everybody always wants to blast by the real reason for this extraordinary growth. People who work at Walmart, ladies and gentlemen, don't make enough money and therefore end up getting food stamps. Coincidentally, who is the biggest beneficiary of food stamps in this country? Walmart in their grocery division. So, yes, it's a great idea for people to work, but here's a better idea. Pay people enough when they do work that they don't need food stamps. In the meantime, I still continue to support programs, community service programs.
Okay.
If people are getting benefits, they can go to work for the community.
But that also speaks to Mike Ozanian's point. You got to get better paying jobs and MIC jobs. But Rich Carlgard, I mean, here's the thing. We've weakened, both President Bush and President Obama weakened the job requirements. I mean, in other words, they left it up to the states. Let the states decide, right? And in the past, we had the job requirement was what? We saw hula classes, Weight Watchers, job training and volunteering qualifies. Should we bring back the work standard into welfare in order to cut the food stamp rolls?
Yes, we have to. We simply have to make getting on food stamps less appealing for adults who are healthy. People between the ages of 18 and 65 who are healthy should not be on food stamps, and if they are, they should have a work requirement. Of course you exempt children. Of course you exempt the truly disabled, not the fake disabled. Of course you exempt people that are old. But look, the expansion has come in this 18 to 65 area, and that just doesn't wash. The economy is not the strongest that it's ever been, but unemployment is down to 6.1%. The recession has been over for 5 years. We need to peel back the number of people on food stamps.
John Tamny, to Mike Ozanian's point, we've been through economic downturns before, and we had, yes, food stamp uses. Again, we want to help women and children, the truly destitute and the poor. But we're talking about able-bodied people who don't have children. There's an explosion in that growth, and we didn't see that trend in prior recessions, John Tamny.
Absolutely, and I'm with Mike. You want to grow the economy because if people are working, they're less likely to need food stamps to begin with. But the other problem I have with this is that we've federalized the distribution of food stamps. I think we've got to remember that cities and states should be the laboratories of ideas. Let them control the distribution of food stamps. If so, there will still be waste, fraud, and abuse, but there will be much less of it because it will be localized.
Wait. Let me push back, John Tamny. 1 second. We're going to get to Bill Baldwin. When you left it up to the states to decide, I mean, the federal reform under Clinton left it up to the states to decide, John Tammy. Then you had the job requirements were weakened at the state level. They let the states decide. That's when you had, Weight Watcher classes qualifying for food stamps, or, anti-smoking classes being able to qualify for food stamps. I don't think that, you think that's the way to go? Leave it up to the states?
I think so. I think that they should be laboratories of ideas. Some cities and states will make them weak, some will make them strong. Let's figure out locally what works best rather than a one-size-fits-all from the federal government that ensures the waste.
Bill, we are rewarding waste, aren't we, to some degree in this program?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about a government mandating a $15 an hour wage, and I think this would be a great place to mandate it. Here's how it would work. If you're earning $600 a month in food stamps, you owe the government 40 hours of work, and we'll find work for you. There's lots of work that needs to be done by the government.
But it's not
doing well enough. And I would be much less sympathetic than some people would be to giving a blanket exemption to parents because they have kids at home. You know what? The taxpayers who are paying for the food stamps have jobs. Those taxpayers have kids. They manage to get to the jobs even though they have kids. So I'm not sure I'd give a blanket exemption on that score at all. You owe 40 hours.
Sabrina, just moving off, it's not about, we're not talking about minimum wages. We're talking about cutting the waste. And I want to keep it, because this debate often gets really derailed, right? It becomes, the factoid intolerant when it goes into the politics. What we want to get into is, does it work? Does it work having a work requirement to get people off food stamps? And does it cut the waste out of the system?
I think it would work, EMAC, and here's why. One of the big problems with the expanding sort of welfare state that we're focused on right now is that we're eroding our sense of self-reliance in this country, and we're eroding our civic society, which in the past have been the places which would help our neighbors and help each of our communities so that we're not dependent on Washington bureaucrats to be sending a debit card for food stamps or for Weight Watcher classes. I think John is onto something. We want to make this more local, but I think we want to get it even more local than government.
Sabrina brings up D.C. bureaucrats, Mike Ozanian. It reminded me of this political cartoon I saw recently. What should we do with people who rely on handouts and refuse to work? Kick them out of Congress.
Going back to Bill Clinton's time.
Rick Unger like that. Go ahead, Ozanian.
Well, Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich managed to come up with a very effective plan to reduce welfare and get people back to work. And unfortunately, as you pointed out, EMAC, that's been eroded over the past several years. I think looking at what Clinton and Gingrich did would be a very good place to start.
Rick Unger, when you get people working, even if it's, this is going to be, I know you're going to maybe make your head explode on this one, forgive me, but when you get people working, they're at the lower end of the food chain, yes, but they could get up and work up the food chain into a higher paying job. So get them off welfare working, and then they'll move higher up into a better paying job, right?
Well, that's hard to argue with. I mean, the problem isn't, I wouldn't disagree with that, so no head exploding yet. But I do think that as they do move up, you've got to pay them a livable wage. And what we still have going on in this country is income inequality to the point that it is now the biggest problem.
Rich, go ahead.
The problem.
Wait, let me get to Rich Karlgaard. Karlgaard, what do you make of getting the waste out of the system? Have you seen it work? Putting people to work stops the waste in the food stamp program, cuts dependency, and cuts dependency on handouts. Go ahead.
Well, if we cut the number of people on food stamps back to 2006 levels, that would be nearly cutting it in half. Without doing anything, you would cut fraud in half. So we have to start by doing that, and then you can go to work on fraud. And to Rick Unger's point, look, Hobby Lobby pays $15 an hour. Costco pays $20 an hour. I know Walmart has become this very convenient foil for liberals to argue that nobody gets paid anything, but that's not true.
John Tamny, what do you think? John.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Rick. You can't legislate higher wages. The only thing you can do is remove. But you can, and you will reduce job opportunity overall.
But we're talking about food stamps. Keep it on food stamps. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and I think if we want to help poor people, and I think all of us do, the worst way to do it is to legislate it from Washington, D.C. Invariably, it's going to be handled in the wrong way, in ways that harm poor people. Give it back to the cities and states. They'll do a much better job, and there will be much less in the way of fraud and abuse.
All right.